Well, ladies and gentlemen, I want to thank all of you for coming here today, and the purpose of calling this news conference was to clarify some of the points in connection with our investigation into Theodore Bundy. Detective Couch is here and will be free to answer any of your questions of what he found through the interview or interrogation that he had with Bundy at the Florida State Penitentiary Sunday. So Detective Couch will come up and he'll answer, or I'll answer, any questions that you might have. Come on up. Any of you have any particular questions? Yes.
What cases are you considering solved, and which ones are you considering unsolved?
Let me help Dennis on that a little bit. All right, at this particular time, Dennis, in talking to Bundy, admitted to the homicide and kidnapping of Wilcox girl and the Kent girl from up in Bountiful. He has also given us an indication on a map where the two bodies of these two individual victims may be found. The unsolved homicides would be easier maybe for me to tell you the ones that we have that we feel could be solved by what we determined from Bundy. That was only those two is all that Bundy actually admitted to. There were two other ones that he did not answer on, and that was the Smith girl and the Aime girl. Although we have physical evidence that, in our opinion, connects Bundy to those two homicides. Other than that, Bundy has made a comment to one of the other investigators that there were 8 homicides here in the state of Utah. We do not know who those other 4 victims might be. We asked him about the Baird girl from up in Layton who disappeared from a convenience store. He denied having anything to do with that particular victim. We did this morning receive information just prior to the execution that Bundy had given the name or the location of a 5th victim to the investigator from the governor's office of Florida, and they are forwarding that up to us immediately. Anything else, Dennis?
So he didn't directly admit to 8 killings to you. He said he gave that to the Washington investigator?
No, we didn't say it was a Washington investigator. He's made admissions that he's responsible for 8 killings in the Utah area. He admitted or gave me information that he's responsible, like the sheriff indicated, for Debbie Kent and Nancy Wilcox. He also showed on the map a general area in which we might locate their bodies.
There were 3 additional names besides the 8 that were reported about this morning because they placed Bundy here 4 years earlier than had suspected. Are those still open cases that you are maybe now looking that Bundy was involved with, or have those been taken off the list?
Those cases were added to the list because of the time element that Bundy was in this particular location. The fact was that all of our cases during that period of time were possibilities, not the fact that Bundy was responsible. The only thing that will be cleared from these cases are the ones that we can actually tie directly to Bundy, either by his confession or by physical evidence that we can develop at a later time. We have an awful lot of work yet to do on all these cases, and they will continue.
We got word from the Leatherberry family that there is no connection there.
There was no indication from Bundy that the Leatherberry was one of his victims. And the reason the Leatherberry victim was added to our list is because of the time element and the manner in which she disappeared, and the way we had found her body was similar to the other ones that Bundy had been responsible for.
Regarding confirmed victims, Kent and Wilcox, did Bundy tell you what he did with the bodies? Did he leave them out in the open? Did he bury them? Did he take them into the mountains?
He indicated to me that, excuse me, that he did bury them, and it was in both of them in mountainous areas.
How detailed was the map? Is that going to be difficult for you to find?
He was having a difficult time with the map. You have to remember, Mr. Bundy was not a native Utahn. It's been almost 15 years ago now, and I felt like he was doing the best he could at the time.
How soon will you start to search for those
We'll start a search for the bodies just as quick as we can look at the areas to see if the conditions are such that we can put people in there. We don't know how much snow is in those particular areas at this time, but that search will start just as quick as we can get into those particular areas.
What's the general area?
Pardon?
The general area?
Yes, the general area is central eastern Utah.
Pretty general.
Let me give you one point in connection with the conversation that Detective Koch had with Bundy, and that was the limited amount of time that we had. We did not have the time to get into each individual case before Mr. Detective Koch's time ran out there at the prison.
Did you feel that if you had more time, that was he being cooperative, and if you had more time, would that have made any difference?
I think Bundy was cooperative to a point. He was still using the system, in my opinion, to the point where he was hoping for a stay. He did give us enough information to know that he was certainly involved in a number of homicides, in which he cleared the 2 of them, as we mentioned. But to have got into the details of all of the other cases that we wanted to talk to him about, we'd have to have at least a couple of days to do that. And Detective Couch had about an hour and a half only.
Should you have asked for more time?
Did we ask for more time?
Do you feel now that maybe you should have?
We did ask for more time. We had a couple of times set for us which were canceled. In fact, we felt very fortunate to get the hour and a half that we did have.
Sheriff, you said you had more work to do on other
Pardon?
cases. You said you had more work to do on the cases. Did Ted Bundy give you anything at all on the other cases outside of the ones that he confessed to that you're going to be able to use to key off of to investigate further?
No, he didn't, but we do have some physical evidence that was recovered from his car some time back, and those cases will be resent back for evaluation. The
How
evidence.
is it, I mean, it's been going on for a long time, and you've had that evidence for a long time, and it wasn't moved on before. How can you move forward now?
Well, because of the fact that we now have the names of some of the other victims. The problem we have with this case with Bundy, there's a lot of missing persons that are still listed as missing, that could have been, or probably was, maybe a victim of Bundy. Some people are still on the list as not as possible suspects, but as just missing persons. And these are the kind of things that we have to do.
Sheriff, how confident do you feel that you can close the books on some of these unresolved cases? Or is there a possibility we may never know that?
The possibility is we never will close a case on some of them. Without the confession of Bundy, or without good physical evidence that our County Attorney Yoakum would allow us to close the cases, those cases have to remain open. The cases that will be closed is the ones that we have physical evidence that tells us that Bundy's responsible, either by something physical or by eyeball witnesses putting him with the victims, or the confessions that Detective Couch brought back from Florida.
Can you say how confident you are, other than the Kent case and the Wilcox case, how many other cases you're positive that Bundy did?
I'm confident of the Smith girl and the Aime girl.
Is that Melissa Smith?
Melissa Smith.
But are those the 2 that, I mean, clarification, Bundy denied those?
No, he did not deny him.
He did not?
He did not. He never has denied him. He didn't deny him to me back in 1975 or 6 when we interrogated him about it. He did not deny him to Detective Couch when he hit him with him at the prison.
But he did deny the Baird woman?
Yes, he did.
Detective Couch, while you were talking with Ted Bundy, what was his demeanor, and why did he express to you why he wanted to make confession here?
No, he gave an indication as to why he was confessing, but first of all, I'll touch on his demeanor. Ted was not the bold, defiant individual that we have observed on TV in the courthouse there in Florida. He was a defeated person. He was extremely fatigued, very pensive at times, even to the point where he was like falling asleep. I sometimes wondered if he was faking that. He had not shaved, it appeared, for approximately 24 hours or so. And during the interview, there was, like Sheriff Hayward indicated, it was an hour-and-a-half interview. Approximately an hour into the interview, he began to break down and cry, and stated that he was sorry. He was not sorry for himself, sorry for the families, and he indicated that he was appalled by the senselessness of it all, and wished that he could have come forward some years ago and talked about it. But he did not elaborate on that.
He didn't say why he didn't come forward this time?
He just said that the circumstances were such, and I assume that's probably a lot of his personality and his survival.
At the couch, Belva Kansas said she was upset at not having been contacted, yet that was one name you got from Bundy. Why the wait in telling this mother?
Well, there's a lot of details that Mr. Bundy related to us, and when I obtained the information from the prison, I was being inundated by news people. It was decided that I would give Sheriff Hayward just some of the basic information, and then I was going to leave town, get back as soon as I could, analyze the information, and then we would disseminate it and then attempt to try to locate the bodies.
But the Wilcox family was contacted yesterday, and the Kent family, according to our sources, as far as this morning, was not.
Well, I'm unaware of...
Let me answer that, Dennis. The Wilcox mother was notified by me yesterday because of the fact that the news media was already out there interviewing her. And I didn't want her to get hit with the shock of having this brought to her without first having the information from us. That's how Mrs. Wilcox was notified.
Sheriff, give us a general thing. You've been doing this a long time. It's been a long case for you. Give me your feelings now that Ted is gone.
The only feelings I have that Ted has gotten just exactly what he deserved. It was a brutal, vicious spree that he was on, and if anybody ever fit the death penalty as such, Ted Bundy did, and this morning that climaxed.
Could we ask Mr. Yoakum to make a similar comment?
Bet.
You were involved in this in 1976, involved in this kidnapping conviction.
74, I think, is when we started with it. Right. Goes back a long way. I have feelings similar to the sheriff that if there was ever a person that deserved, you can deserve it, the death penalty, would be Ted Bundy. There's certainly been a lot of lives touched by Ted here in Utah, Washington, Colorado, now Florida, and a lot of dead people as a result of Ted. I think what probably might have happened hadn't we had an alert sheriff's department in 1975 with the aid of the Murray Police Department. As you remember, the Duranch case was a Murray case originally, and worked together with the Murray Police Department and the Sheriff's Department to obtain that conviction of Bundy of that kidnapping case. And the thought goes through my mind, how many dead bodies would there be throughout the United States if we hadn't had an alert police department and sheriff's office to stop Ted when we did? And of course it was only because he escaped in Colorado that we had more victims in Florida and maybe even victims in Michigan, where he went after he escaped from Colorado. But I think the Sheriff's Department and the Murray Police Department, the fact that we were able to catch him at the time we did and under those circumstances, is a real credit to our law enforcement in this county.
Working in the system, how do you feel about the fact that it's taken 11 years for this to take place with the appeal system?
Well, any capital case takes a long time, and actually 11 years compared to what we've seen in Utah is not long. Fairly fast, actually, with the track that goes on nationally. Yeah, I'm upset, as I think all law enforcement, the legal community, prosecution, with the length of time it takes and the number of appeals that are available to people on death row. I think that we would certainly ought to look to our Congress to legislate on the federal level to limit the numbers of appeals and certainly speed up the appeal process in capital cases. And I certainly would hope that the community would support that idea too.
Detective Couch, given Bundy's demeanor, do you think you would have gotten more out of him if you had spent more time, if you had requested a delay in the execution, for example?
Well, it wasn't a matter of we wouldn't even requested that. We talked about that with Sheriff Hayward, Attorney General Van Dam, even some of the family members, and no one was in agreement with any concessions on our part.
But given his demeanor, in other words, do you think you got out of him what you were going to get out of him, based on what he was?
No, I think if we had more time, we would have got more information.
Detective, can you relate to us a little bit about the drawings of the map and at what point in the interview that took place, and what kind of map
It's a regular map of Utah. It was, you have to understand. Yes, of Utah. It was a very slow-moving interview. It took a complete hour for those two girls, and you must be informed that they informed me I was only going to have 30 minutes that night. Earlier in the day, I was supposed to have had an hour and a half, but that meeting was canceled Saturday night. I was informed 11 o'clock Saturday night that Mr. Bundy had changed his mind and thought I was negative toward him and toward his case. In reviewing that information, and later on, it was determined that there were Attorney General representatives from every other agency that was down there except Utah. I don't know what their, well, I don't want to speculate on what their intent was to get all of the AG people down there. So consequently, Sunday, I received a call from Sheriff Hayward, who had been in touch with Mr. Van Dam, and Sheriff Hayward wanted me to call Mr. Van Dam about the situation down there, which I did. And Mr. Van Dam said he had been in touch with, in fact, received a phone call from attorneys from Bundy's camp, and they wanted to know why a representative wasn't down there. And what that conversation is, I don't know. You'd have to check with Mr. Van Dam. But subsequently, Mr. Van Dam indicated that he would empower me to act on his behalf if need be, and he would go along with whatever law enforcement would want if the question was posed to him.
Sheriff, could you talk about the specific evidence that links Bundy with the Kent and the Wilcox case? What makes you so sure that he was the one?
With Debbie Kent and Wilcox, what we have is that links them is the confession of Bundy and what he told Detective Kautz in the interview. What we have on the other two is physical evidence that we picked up out of the car that belonged to Bundy, which was analyzed also, that we had Bundy identified by the Utah County authorities as being associate and in the company of the Aime girl in the area of Lehigh.
He delivered no other names besides the two.
That's all, and that was due to the time element that we had and the time it took to get out of Bundy at this particular point, the locations on the map.
So the chances of solving any other cases besides the four that we've talked about, specifically either physical evidence or confession, are nil at this point.
It's pretty close. It's pretty tough. We got an awful lot of work to do yet. Those cases will all be reviewed based upon what we do have from the other investigators. We hope that at some point we'll be able to bring these investigators together to look at what they learned from Bundy, and if in fact there was anything in their tapes that may refer to the Utah cases.
Yeah, that's my question. Is there any indication either from Washington or any other investigator, including the FBI, that other names in Utah were mentioned to other investigators?
That hasn't been determined yet, and that's what we hope to do in the future.
Sheriff, how much time and money has been spent on the Ted Bundy case in Utah?
I have no idea. I have no idea.
He's going to have to check the Visa card that I took down there first. Wait for the receipts on that.
Sheriff, for a point of clarification, could you give us now a list of the 4 victims that you believe now are victims of Ted Bundy, and those that you think may be related, and those that you're looking into the names?
I can give you the 4 that we have, we feel are Bundy is responsible for. The other 4 that might make up the 8 that he referred to is still open. We don't know which ones they would be. The one would be the Wilcox, Kent, Aime, and Smith.
Of the 2 he admitted to, can you tell us, Detective, how well he remembered those events, and when he was pointing it out on the map, how he did so, and if he remembered dates and specifics?
He was not specific about very many of the details. I did not press him. When I was driving out to the prison, I realized I only had 30 minutes to talk to Mr. Bundy, and I had 2 confirmed homicides and 3 missing girls that we were concerned about. I knew that Mr. Bundy was 36 hours away from the electric chair. I realized also that they had canceled my meeting just the day before, and for reasons that he had indicated he thought I was negative against his case, which I don't believe that to be the case, but I did become aware, and we were knowledgeable about the fact that Bundy has always disliked Utah authorities, and we feel the reason is Utah was his downfall. This is where he was arrested and convicted initially, and that started his downfall.
So he didn't have a lot of specifics when he told you about the two that he killed and pointed them out, and he didn't recall dates or anything like that.
No, that's correct.
And do you believe him that when he said he did not kill the bear woman?
I went back to that a second time, and I said, first of all, I said we have 3 missing girls and 2 confirmed homicides. When I finished with Wilcox and Kent and asked him about Baird, he laughed. No, he says, "You're not going to put that one on me." I went back to it a second time later on, and he also said negative to that. Another time I mentioned about 3 women being missing that we were interested, and he made the statement, "No, there's more than that." And of course, I was thinking of Baird being one of the people involved in those 3 missing persons, but when he said, "No, there's more than that," and I asked him how many, he said 2 more. But
Mr. Couch, yesterday you said that Bundy was, I think you said, pulling your chain, and today you mentioned that he was faking, you thought he was faking during part of this interview. How confident are you that we can believe anything that he has said? Given his past experience, how can we believe what he's saying?
Well, I believed him. I was there, and I talked to the other investigators. I think there was enough questions and answers that I asked and that he answered that I know he's responsible for those 2 girls that we talked about.
Did you believe him when he said he was sorry?
Yes, I believe, I think that's what brought him to finally tell some of this horrendous activities that he's been involved in for so many years. I do believe that he wants to tell the families that he was sorry.
Detective, you touched on it, some of the pressure that you went through. What went through your mind when you sat down face to face with Bundy, knowing the constraints that you were under?
Well, I was constantly aware of the time factor. When he was very slow and deliberate with me, it was extremely frustrating, and I did not want to lose my coolness and anger him. The man was looking at an electric chair. He could have got up and walked out on me. I wanted to get as much information as I could on the 3 missing girls. That's what I was concerned about, and that's what I was geared up for.
Did I count Nancy Bear the only other name that you mentioned besides the 4 girls we talked about? The only other name you asked him about?
Yes, of the 3 girls, I at one point, in fact, I was being pressed to get up and leave the room. My time was up, and Mr. Bundy was saying that he was ready to go to bed. He'd had enough. His mind was all scrambled. Obviously, it looked like he hadn't slept for a while. He's been under a lot of questioning. Unlike myself, the investigators from those other agencies had 2 or 3 shots at the man. I only had the 1 shot. And I was given 5 or 10 minutes, and I just quickly asked him about Laura, Aime, and Melissa Smith, all in 1 sentence. And the man could not look me in the eye. He put his head in his hands, and he would not answer that question. And we got up and departed.
What time?
That was 9 o'clock that I finished.
Sheriff, can you tell us how big of an area you're going to have to search? I mean, saying you're dealing with a Utah highway map.
Central eastern Utah. We think that we'll be able to, with what the information he gave us, pin this down to approximately probably a mile within where we feel that he may have buried these people. The areas that he has given us, and listening to the tapes, he was pretty specific. In the areas, there was some confusion on some of the highway numbers, but on the last one down in the farther south area, he pinpointed and marked it with an X, and we're very familiar with that area. And also in the eastern part of the state, was another one that he marked, and we feel that we can find that by the information he gave us. Now, I'm sure that confused you. Pardon? They're buried. The indication and the information that he gave Detective Couch was that he had buried them, put dirt on them, put rocks on them, then put more dirt on them so that they would be not accessible to animals.
It's gonna be extremely difficult to find something under the ground.
It's always difficult to find them out, but we'll do our best to locate them. We got a lot of people eager to get out there and look for them.
So that's two different areas, or just within that radius? Or, I mean, two
Can you give
different
us the
areas?
names of counties where the graves are?
Leave it on there. Leave it on there.
Washington County, Kane County, and possibly San Pete County.
Why do you think that there are some times when he just left the bodies out on the surface, and now he's switching and he's burying them?
I can't answer that, Dave. It's a change in the MO that he designed, and of course, we were finding the bodies, which might have been the reason, finding them pretty quickly after they were done away with. The one in American Fork Canyon, we found in a short period of time. The Melissa Smith, we don't feel that she had been there more than a few hours when we found her. So that might have been the reason, and it might have been the reason that he went farther away than what he did on those previous cases.
Sheriff, where does the victim's name, Sandra Weaver, fit in? Is she one of the ones you're considering?
Sandra Weaver was a girl that disappeared, and the body was found in Colorado. That was only another situation that came up in view of the time period and the manner in which Bundy had been operating. Her name was put in there. We couldn't overlook any of those unsolved homicides of those females during that period of time, and that was the reason their names were put on the list.
Where do you feel it fits in now? Do you feel he was involved?
We have nothing at this time at all that fits to Bundy, other than the fact that Bundy, we know by tracing Bundy's steps, went through that particular area.
Sheriff, could you clarify something for us? You've given us three counties, Washington, Kane, San Pete. Those are in the south, I believe, and.
Southeastern counties.
Except for-
Southeastern part of those counties.
Okay, all right. You've given us three, does that mean three possible areas where
Well,
the two bodies are?
no.
Three bodies?
No, the one could be in either one of the other those, depending how close to the line we were on.
Two bodies.
Two bodies.
Sheriff, an investigator from another agency, as I understand it, told you there could be 8 Utah homicides from Bundy. Do Weaver, Debbie Smith, and Sue Curtis, how do they fit in there?
As the other ones have. They were homicides that were committed during that period of time that we felt that maybe Bundy was responsible for, and we're looking at him on that
Any
basis.
specifics given to those other agencies or investigators that would lead you to believe those are the three, or not?
Nothing other than just the fact that they disappeared during this period of time and have not been recovered.
So you're looking at any of those names that are still out there, are still possibilities to fill in the blanks?
That's correct. But let me make something perfectly clear to you. There'll be none of those cases cleared unless we can positively convince the county attorney's office that Bundy is responsible for them. It isn't that we're going to go here and wipe the slate clean on unsolved homicides. The only person or the only cases that will be cleared will be the ones that we can specifically tie Bundy to by either physical evidence or by his confessions.
And you said you're going to meet with other authorities. How soon do you hope to do that?
Just as quick as I can get to them and get them all to decide where and when that they will be available for us, as soon as possible if I can.
Who will this include?
Pardon?
Who will this include?
This will include all that was down in Florida. All the agencies were in Florida. I think it's important to all of us in law enforcement and investigating these other cases that we get together with those people to see just exactly what they developed in their interviews with Bundy.
You once, when we were talking once, and you said that you thought that Bundy would turn out to be the greatest investigator of all time.
Doing our investigation of what we found in the background and what we've concluded with Bundy up to this point, it is my opinion of that, yes, that Bundy would be one of the foremost serial killers that this country's ever known. And I don't think that we've even scratched the surface on Bundy, in my opinion.
Is there now any other option left now that Bundy's dead? Finding any more evidence? Is there any suspicion that he might have left a log of what he did or anything, anyplace?
I personally think, through information that we've received over the years, that someplace and someone Bundy has told the whole story to. And that sometime and someplace will come forth, I think, before too long. And when it does, we'll be talking to our legal advisors of how we're going to get that information. But there are people who spend a lot of time with Bundy.
Thank you, Cal. I just have one other question. When you talked to Ted Bundy, did you give him the names? You gave him the names one at a time, or did he offer you any name?
The time was such that obviously I had to throw out a lot of investigative, interrogative, interviewing techniques. They told me I had 30 minutes. I wanted to find 3 bodies. I went in and rather than begin, Ted Bundy, when did you first come to Salt Lake City? I started by, when you left Carol de Ranch, which way did you go? Where did you go? The man sat there and didn't say anything. And for quite a long time, I said, Debbie Kent, you went north, Debbie Kent, now tell me about, he says, yes, we'll get into that. Let's look at the map here. I had to use names, yes.